New Japan, AEW, and Impact. And speaking of Impact, we might as well start out with them. Slammiversary 2021 was actually an exceptionally good show. It was the first Impact show that I watched in a pay-per-view I watched in a long time and actually went out of my way to actually go get and pay for. It was pretty damn good. I remember enjoying that show a lot. Now, a lot of that had to do with the fact that a lot of people that I liked from other companies, including Kenny Omega and Finn Juice, were in this show. But it wasn't just that. A lot of the Impact wrestlers, Sami Callihan, Chris Bay, a lot of their local, normal, usual, on-the-roster talent really impressed me on this show. Of course, the main event featured Kenny Omega defending the Impact World Championship against Sami Callihan. And after the match is when things got a little bit more interesting. Jay White, of all people, shows up at the Impact Zone, confronts Kenny Omega, which is a confrontation a lot of us international wrestling fans have wanted to see for quite some time. Also confronting the Good Brothers and Don Callis, given the fact how Bullet Club has changed, and the Bullet Club of the Good Brothers era and the Bullet Club of Kenny Omega's era now meeting the current Bullet Club led by Jay White, because it is still, of course, his era. The only downside of the show was the weird worked shoot ending where they abruptly went off the air with somebody attacking somebody and you didn't really get to see who it was, but it was a pretty good show. I definitely enjoyed a lot of what happened at the Slammiversary event this year. So yes, for the first time in quite some time, an Impact show is on my best events of the year list. So let's go over and look at WWE. Now, WWE had some pretty damn good shows itself, surprisingly enough, and one of them is WrestleMania. The first night. The second night was no. But the first night of WrestleMania, I remember watching it and going, this is WWE at its best. Now, there are no great match of the year contenders on this show, but it was a show as a whole that was paced very well. All the matches were the right length, the right outcomes. The crowd was into it. Of course, this is one of the first events that WWE had where they had fans back in attendance. And I have to say, up and down across the board, that entire first night, I came away from the first night going, holy crap, WWE, this was one of the better WrestleManias in the last 3 or 4 years that I've actually watched. And then they had night two, but the less said about that, the better. Another great show that I thought that WWE had this year was the Money in the Bank show. Money in the Bank 2021. That I think roundly across the board, WWE, for everybody from the WWE sweaties who would think it was great anyway, but up to the more critical fans, the more honest fans, people who might not even like WWE that much, I think across the board, most people I saw really enjoyed Money in the Bank, and like, this is the kind of stuff WWE should do. They cut down on a lot. There wasn't a lot of silly promos, stupid, goofy stuff that made you roll your eyes if you were over the age of 13. There wasn't a lot of just over-the-top nonsense. They did have their usual selling you stuff over and over again, but for the most part, this show was matches and brief promos and backstage interviews, and then we're on to the next match. Everybody performed well. You had some really solid matches in there. Big E Langston winning the Money in the Bank was the capper on the whole night. You had some excellent matches in the women's division. That whole show, I will go, if there's one WWE pay-per-view I would say to go out of your way to watch from 2021, it would be the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. Unfortunately, that didn't continue on for the rest of the year, but those two shows, WrestleMania Night 1 and Money in the Bank, were my two favorite WWE shows of the year. All Elite Wrestling, well, damn, you know, I mean, it's not like All Elite Wrestling didn't have any duds. They had a very obvious dud earlier in the year with the infamous exploding ring match between Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley, which was just horrible. And the ending just... You can't, I mean, AEW sweaties will go, oh, well, no, that was bad. That was pretty bad. But on the positive side, AEW has some pretty damn good shows, and not just their pay-per-views. There were editions of Dynamite that felt like pay-per-views. Of course, the Arthur Ashe Stadium show, Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson going to a 30-minute time limit draw. That was absolutely fantastic, and the atmosphere there kind of lets you see what AEW could be in a WrestleMania kind of atmosphere. Even though it wasn't 60,000 people, this was semi-outdoor stadium, 20-some plus thousand people, sold out. They had the little extra in their stage presentation and everything else. It was a fantastic show, one of the best, which is also, we could talk about the Homecoming show, the First Dance in Chicago with the return of CM Punk. That's another great event. The last show at Daly's Place that they had for AEW Dynamite was a great event. The Blood and Guts show was a great show that I enjoyed from AEW. Winter is Coming was a great show. But as far as the pay-per-views were concerned, I think probably universally speaking, and I'm going to say this for myself, and I think a lot of other people would agree, All Out 2021 is probably the pay-per-view of the year. The card moved very well. There were a lot of great matches on the card, of course. You had a definite, probably a lot of people's match of the year. Pentagon and Phoenix going up against the Young Bucks for the AEW World Tag Team Championships in a steel cage. Darby Allin. I mean, again, this is another across-the-board thing, just from start to finish. There's just a ton of great stuff on this show. And then the crazy stuff that they pulled in with all of these surprises on the show. Minoru Suzuki showing up to confront Jon Moxley. That was, I mean, I got goosebumps from that. You got Ruby Soho making her debut. And of course, at the end of the show, the one that everybody is losing their minds over.
Yes, he is! I am gone, baby! I'm gonna put the TV up. I'll put it up right now. Maya. I'm gonna put the TV up. Bro. Oh, this. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole Bay showing up in All Elite Wrestling. I mean, All Out is probably as close to a perfect pay-per-view wrestling show as you could probably see in 2021. And yeah, sure, Double or Nothing and Revolution were decent, and they were good shows, and so was the Full Gear show. That was an okay show. I think the Full Gear was probably the least of the 4 big pay-per-views from them this year. But overall, All Out just knocked it out of the park. And again, certain episodes of AEW Dynamite, the first episode of Rampage, they were all fun events. They all felt like pay-per-views. So I have to give it up to AEW. They had multiple shows this year that were just outstanding. And on to my favorite, New Japan Pro Wrestling. New Japan, again, 2020 and 2021 have been rough years for them. Not only just falling out of grace because AEW's kind of stolen their thunder here in the West as far as being the second tier, it's the number 2 wrestling company. New Japan was that for a while, and now they're not. And even I think internationally, probably they might still be considered number 2 because I think they have a higher reach internationally than AEW does. But New Japan didn't not have good events this year. Wrestle Kingdom was awesome as always. Highlighted by the main event. Oh my God! And this is another match of the year contender that a lot of people tend to forget about because it happened at the beginning of the year. But the match between Jay White and Kota Ibushi at the end of Wrestle Kingdom. Oh my God! That was probably. Not only was it Jay White's best performance, it was one of the best Wrestle Kingdom matches I've seen over the last 10 years. It's one of a lot of people said it obviously was the longest Tokyo Dome match ever, but the performances between Jay White and Kota Ibushi in that match were just fantastic. I would love to see a rematch with the two of them. And Jay White's worked shoot promo afterwards was fantastic. And that whole, it set a different, it got back to that level of feeling like, I want to see what happens, with New Japan, and that next level feeling that you kind of only really get from a New Japan show. Now, Dominion and the finals of the G1, which usually are on this list for me, Dominion I didn't really enjoy that much. Not as much as I have in the past. And the finals of the G1, for obvious reasons, the unfortunate injury Kota Ibushi suffered in the finals of the G1 tournament that kind of, soured the whole night. That was shaping up to be a pretty good night. So overall, New Japan, not as many stellar events that they've had this year as they've had in past years. Again, there's multiple reasons for it. You can check my Company Grades video for the reasons that I think New Japan kind of fell off a lot more this year than they really needed to, even with the pandemic. But Wrestle Kingdom, I would say definitely go check out Wrestle Kingdom from last year. That was a great show. And the New Japan Cup is surprisingly looking back on all the events now this year, that one had me more excited than most of the other more higher tier B and A-list New Japan events of the year. So yes, again, overall, I'm going to have to say for me personally, my favorite pay-per-view big event of 2021 was AEW's All Out show for obvious reasons that I already stated, but I want to know what you guys think. What were your favorite events of 2021? What were events in other companies? NXT UK has some good stuff. NXT has some good stuff that I didn't cover in this video. And other wrestling promotions, Triple Mania, I heard was pretty good this year. There's the Saudi shows that I never watch. I heard one of the Saudi shows were pretty good this year. There's some MLW shows that you could probably bring up, and across the board, GCW, whoever it is, let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Until then, I will see you guys as we continue to count down and recap the year of 2021 in the world of pro wrestling and sports entertainment right here on the Rant and Review Pro Wrestling. Have a good day.